and welcome to Our People, the podcast where we give space for Holdeman stories. We focus on hope, healing, and inspiration. Connection, consciousness, and love are the driving motivations for this project. Remember to have grace for those who have chosen to speak out and share their experience. Please enjoy the story you will hear today. Welcome to Our People. I'm Waylon, and I'm here today with my co-host Billy, and we are talking to Monica today. Monica, would you want to start out just giving us an introduction to yourself?
Sure. I grew up in Canadian prairies. I lived there on a grain farm and a hog farm till I was about age 17, and moved further south to Ontario. Not really sure how to start.
Before we started, you said that you had left around the age of 19. What I assume you were in the church and expelled, or
Yeah.
did you never join?
So I got baptized at age 14. It was kind of like really, really quick. It was like the minister said, we're having convert meeting on Friday and baptism next Sunday. And I was like, okay. And then dad came home and said, the preachers want to talk to you. So I was like, okay. And then I visited with them on Wednesday, and like I never felt like I really had a conversion experience. I just like kept praying to Jesus, like to give asking that he would forgive me, and then it was like half an hour later, it's like, I don't think that worked, I'll have to try again. And I kept on, and then they're like, oh, you're probably saved. It's like, okay. And then talking to the ministers, and they're like that, oh, sounds good. I was like, I don't know, I didn't really have anything. And then at the convert meeting, they're like, you've changed. I was like, I changed. And so yeah, then I got baptized on the Sunday, and I kind of realized later, like in hindsight, that they thought I was ready to join because I was meek and obedient. Doesn't really matter what I would say. It was like I would be somebody who would follow the church. So I was ready to join. And I was like 14 years old. And I was a very, very staunch. I wasn't like I was going to be a Holdeman for the rest of my life. I think I wrote that in my journal. I would do a lot of journaling. It was just like a series of many small events that kept changing my perspective. Not small, they were maybe big in a way, but they kept changing my perspective until I gradually had changed enough that I was like, well, this is the next step. Now I'm going to leave. That's the next step.
I guess two questions I have. One of them is maybe not a question, but just tell us more about the steps. But then also, why do you think it is that proving converts seems to have so much more connection to whether people think that staff and members will believe somebody's going to be obedient to the church versus whether they're actually converted? Because that's something that I've wondered. I've seen that so often where I was like, this person's their story doesn't make sense. How many people out there don't have parents to confirm it and a bed to go pray on, and I felt peace. And it's like, well, explain peace, because the definition we have, so some of that. Why do you think that the church is so concerned with converts' countenance toward the church and obeying the motion of the church, seems to outweigh proving their conversion?
The whole culture is designed to perpetuate the culture. So like as long as the church needs to be safe. So like the most important thing is that you're going to be obedient to it. Conversion experience, like I kind of have a bone to pick with some of that, because I'm like, I wouldn't have naturally thought, oh, at this age I need to like give my heart to the Lord. It was like put into my head, like, are you going to give your heart to the Lord? Like when he calls you, will you give your heart to the Lord? And it's just like, to me, it's more like that's a very sensitive age for young people, like for like getting into your puberty, getting into that age. And I think it's kind of like capitalized on or whatever. Like they kind of take advantage of that and be like steer them towards that path. Like you should start to feel like this is the age of accountability. You should start to feel bad. You should start to feel worried about going to hell. And that's like sort of an artificial thing that they create, like as a step. It's like it is kind of like a sort of like culturally, it's like an initiation into like young adulthood in a way, because like then you get to be a member and stuff, then you get to join and you're part of the group and stuff. But like it works because they're young. They can get them when they're younger, and then they're easier to manipulate their thoughts, and like they think that they should be getting converted, and yeah,
kind of coercive almost. It points them to one choice.
mm-hmm. Like I think that's a spiritually sensitive time for children, but because I've like worked with children a bit and tried to study some of this, but I would wish that they could be like encouraged on their own path instead of saying, hey, you have to go only on the church path.
Mm-hmm.
So you said there was a series of steps to where you eventually got to where the next step was leaving the church. Would you want to elaborate on kind of what those steps were? What were you thinking? Where was your mind at? What was going through your heart as these steps? What steps were they? What brought you to that point?
So when I was 16, a couple youth in our congregation died in a car accident, and that was like very upsetting for all of us, and just very like, I don't know for sure exactly how it shifted my consciousness, but I know that I like started to think deeper about things, and I was already sort of introspective, but that was like sort of a first jolt of my consciousness. And then 4 months later we moved, and it was like my dad's hog farm just kind of went under, and he needed to start over and wanted to maybe help start a small congregation, and wanted to live closer to family. That was my parents' kind of reason for moving. And then I just wanted to I wanted to make like deeper relationships, deeper connections. And I thought if I moved to a small congregation, then there'd like only be like a few other people, and I could maybe get to know them well, and we could get closer. So we moved, and kind of found out that, I felt like I found out that I don't get along with everybody. Like I thought should be and could be friends with everybody, but it's not as simple as that. And also the congregation that I moved from was kind of like mediumly liberal. The place we moved to, the people who had kind of founded it were a bit more strict. So I was like, then we kind of all got a little uncomfortable with that. And so like a year and a half, about a year and a half after moving to Ontario, we moved like an hour away to a really liberal congregation where I also didn't quite fit in because I wasn't quite used to that. But and we were all having we all had like my family and I all had trouble with like mental health issues and depression, and it got worse when we moved after we moved, and we started like we were taught like went to see a doctor. Some of us kind of all went to see the same one, um, and and then there was a time when he like he told um, he told my parents, he's like, I seem to see a lot of Mennonites about depression. I don't know if it was just Mennonite women or Mennonites particularly about depression, and that's when they kind of started to realize maybe it's like the Holdemans. Like maybe we keep moving. We moved a few places. Maybe it's actually the Holdemans. And I was just like, I remember that moment walking back to the house, and I was walking like behind some of my family members, and the sun was shining. I was like, I thought to myself, I might not be a Holdeman for the rest of my life. And that was just like a very big realization. So that was kind of like the beginning of the end. It's like seeing like my folks were doing some counseling. I don't know, we were all like I did a little bit of therapy, but kind of just we just all worked at it on our own, kind of together. We left kind of together, but each had our own. Like one of my siblings didn't want to leave right away. They moved away, and then later on moved back home, and then did decide to leave. But
when seeking the mental health services, did you have to get permission from the staff, or did they know about it?
So like not seeing a doctor, that wasn't really an issue. I was young, so it was like, and it was a liberal congregation. It was actually one of the fellow members that had recommended this like counseling series to my folks, and then later on apologized for doing that because it actually helped them leave the church. But yeah, the
And you talk
counseling,
about, oh, sorry.
the counseling was more just after
Oh, yeah.
leaving, I think, more. But
Yeah. Because one thing I thought about is you talked about these different levels of liberalism versus maybe more conservative approach congregations, and that's something that's very interesting to me. You know, for the one united, undivided church, you know, you'd think things would be so absolutely uniform, but it's not so much. And I'm finding more of that, like being from Kansas. Yeah, things are pretty well aligned there because they're so close and can control everything. But as you go around, you know, we're seeing a lot more variation, especially with the younger people, and that's something that I'm curious about. And especially hearing people who've had the Canadian perspective and seeing what's happening there too. Yeah, that's been. Yeah, because I've only been to a Canadian congregation once, and I was too young to remember it. So
yeah, that's interesting how it changes. I wanted to mention some other things. Is what happened for me when I actually stopped going to church was there was two preachers, and one was more like kind and gentle, and I liked listening to him, so I would go to church every other Sunday when I knew he would be preaching. And then they benched him. And I got panic attacks when I went to listen to the sermon. So I like stopped going to church because I can't go to church and have panic attacks in church. And got lots of flowers. I got so many flowers for not going to church. Like wondering if I wasn't well. Anyway, and yeah, I went to a few more used deals, I think, but mostly stopped going to church then, and then ones of my family members stopped at different times. They took
You said something about
time.
Something about a counseling series. Was it like a program or just?
Yeah, like kind of like a video program. Yeah.
Do you remember what that program was?
It was called Caring for the Heart.
Okay. I find that interesting about the panic attacks. I've heard that from several people recently, that they've had panic attacks when they go to church.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Like there's something about it, because it wasn't always this way, and I don't know when it changed for me, but there came a point where church was horrible for me, which was really hard because I always really enjoyed church most of my life. And what made me realize it is I bought a new Bible because I got blind enough not to be able to read the one I had. Because, you know, as a youth age people, you're supposed to have the smallest Bible you can. Well, I got this newer Bible, and within just 2 years, it was so warped, and I could see where I held my Bible, because when I had a different Bible specifically for church. So this Bible only went to church, and I had a different Bible I used at home, but it was so warped around my hand for how hard I would clutch it in church, and I never realized that until one day I just looked at this wrinkly Bible, and I still use it, but I remember that, and it's a reminder to me that I need to be more in tune with with my body and how I'm reacting. Because sometimes, we try
Yeah.
to ignore how we're feeling, but um, mental health and being focused on that and not dismissing it or calling it a spiritual problem has been very new. Yeah, like what are some like how have you found some healing? Because mental health is such a big part of a lot of people's journey with
Hmm.
the church, even within, and how they cope with that, or what they do. I mean, so yeah, maybe share a little bit about um, how you've been able to find healing since going out.
Hmm. I remember this is a story, but I'll start with a story. I remember sitting at the window, like with the rain coming down the window, and tears were going down my cheeks, and I wondered to myself, is it going to be like this for the rest of my life? Um, and it's not been. Um, but it took quite a while. Like I had I had depression while in the Holdemans, and then also for a few years after. Um, I tried medication, didn't work. I knew I didn't want to take it anyway. And I've gone to see quite a few um, counselors of different kinds, and it never really worked for me very well. It helped. Like I appreciate the help that they have given me, and I know that it's helped, but my path was to figure it out for myself, and I needed to do that. And that also gave me agency, and it made me learn to trust my truth and to find out what my truth was. So I would, like, the first few years, like, I was too depressed to really work, and I would just go on my computer and study psychology. I would study it for myself. I was like, does this work? This has worked for me before. Okay, I'll try that. Does this work? No, this doesn't really work. And then like it led me on, and I just kept studying it for myself, and slowly changing my beliefs and changing, like, the way that I would think, and trying to be positive, and um, just working at it. It's like one step at a time, and learning to love myself, and express my emotions. And I started dance. That was my bit of rebellion. I was like, I'm going to do dance because I could never do that. And then I also have been learning a form of body work that has really helped me with, like, nervous system regulation, and like all these different things. Like I kept going back and forth between, like, helping my physical body, helping my emotions, helping my mental, and helping my spiritual. I'd be like, which one do I need? And then I'd work on one for a while, then I'd work on the other for a while, and I just like created my path. I've created my own path, and it's like so fun. It's not fun because it's hard, but it's also, like, very rewarding.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I really like how you framed all of that, and I also hearing somebody say, like, I took agency for myself, and I made my own way, because that's something that hasn't been a tool available,
No, for
and
sure.
um and it's something that I I'm learning too, but I never have thought about it in that way of, like, well, I can do a lot of this on my own. Um and I'm very thankful that I don't have to do it alone. Like, I have a very good support network um now, and that has been a really big change for my life too. Um and I think it'll probably be a lifelong journey. But yeah, I just really like how you laid that out.
Hmm. I've thought sometimes, like, how could I leave? I feel a bit like, I felt like I had sort of like an inside self and an outside self, where there was a place inside of me, and especially when I would be in nature, where I felt safe when I was growing up. It was, like, different. Like, nature accepted me exactly how I was, and all the other people didn't. I was something wrong, but that was a different self. I would go be by myself with my art. My art was, like, probably a big part of what healed me as well. Um, and I think maybe that little seed probably helped me to like kind of stand back enough that I can be like, this maybe isn't my path anymore. Like I'm not gonna, I can find my own way. Although I didn't leave with a plan in mind. I just left because this didn't work. Like I couldn't do it. I felt like I couldn't be a successful Holdeman. Like I had too much anxiety to like go to a unit. I had too much anxiety to be a teacher. I did finally figure out, I did have a job for a bit. I was like, I don't know if I could even have a job. I didn't know about getting married. Like, I just like, I can't do any of the things that I'm supposed to do. So I just need to go elsewhere. Like, I need to have a different life path because I can't do this life path.
I have a daughter that she's artistic, and just watching her has made me curious. Did you ever go through a period when your art was darker?
That's how I started. I was angry, and I angry at the Mennonites, angry at the Holdemans, and I like did one black stroke over the canvas, and I turned it into quite a dark painting. And that was like my first like 4 or 5 paintings. And then after that, it started to get lighter, and I don't really need to paint darkness. I prefer not to go there. Well, what do I say? I prefer not to have that like um bring that into creation, like bring that into being. But
Mhm.
it's just, but I do find need to, like in some ways, like I did create a piece recently that for me is about religion, about the harshness that can be in religion, and then bringing in like the soft, divine, feminine. Um, but yeah, that is kind of how I started. Yeah.
Thing.
Also, I want to say that a good way for helping with anger for me has been like angry dancing. So I would like angry dance to Michael Jackson's DS, and I would like to get out my anger about like I don't know, being Holdeman, feeling controlled, whatever it was, you know. And I really
Mhm.
liked that. That was like a kind of a therapeutic way of helping myself deal with anger.
You said that you didn't think you would, or you didn't have a conversion experience. And you talked about spirituality on this podcast. We represent about every belief, kind of not every belief, but pretty much the whole range of beliefs. Um, I'm just curious, what's if you want to, do you want to share what spirituality means to you now?
About a year after leaving the Holdemans, I started to leave religion. Um, and one of the first books that helped me was the book A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson. Um, and also just the internet. I feel like the internet, I could contribute the internet to helping me be able to leave as well because it opened my mind so much. I was like, so my first one of my first things I was like was one of my first questions was like, what if aliens are real? I've always loved space. Like when I was a little kid, I wanted to be a teacher and an author and an astronaut. And I never thought of it that little Holdeman kids couldn't be astronauts. I just wanted to be an astronaut. So like some of those things opened my mind. Studied everything that I could, but like had to learn how to find my way because the internet is full of lots of stuff. Um,
Mhm.
and I feel like I have just built my spirituality. It's like built on built on what feels right for me. I feel like truth like truth kind of changes. Like I've learned to embrace like paradox. I don't know, like my spirituality is very important to me. Always like I think I've always been sort of like introspective. Like after church, after the sermon, I wanted to stand up and talk with the girls about the sermon, and they wanted to talk about the youth deals and the dresses. Um, and
Mhm.
and I was always spiritual. Like I couldn't let like that part of me wasn't something that would go. But I didn't like, I needed to expand out of religion because it was kind of too constricting for me, and things didn't make sense about Christianity for me. Although I appreciate there's beauty in it as well, and I'm trying to appreciate kind of all spiritual paths. But I feel like for me, the most it's been so I don't know what the right word is, enlivening. It's been so like um helped me blossom or grow, or I don't know, think of the word, but to choose, like, to create my own path, to figure out what things resonate with me, and what I love. I've just love has been kind of like a main theme for me. Like, if it feels like love, if it helps you helps promote life, then I believe it. I believe it if it helps promote life, you know. That still doesn't say exactly what I believe, but I don't know. If you have any questions, maybe I can go with that.
I think that's a really good descriptor. A question I've had, and I've been curious to see what people say. Do you feel that people within the church deep down really know that? Um, that they really would operate that way if it weren't for the culture they find themselves in. I mean, and I don't know if that's clear at all, but that people they really, I don't know if they could necessarily articulate it because I couldn't have, but that's really what they would they would seek if they didn't think it was dangerous. I don't know.
Like,
Um,
seek to create their own path.
Not seek to create their own path, but to seek a way that is led by love,
Mm-hmm.
and and how that changes the type of interactions we have, rather than out of our love picking from a menu of things we've been told are loving, if that makes sense. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. Because it's loving to warn somebody that they're heading the wrong way, and they better get back in line and reprove them for that. But uh, yeah, I don't know. I'm not being very clear either. It's hard to describe things that can be so um, freeing. That's another thing I've had to explore is when you have freedom, there are so many choices, and that can almost be paralyzing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so, yeah, I don't know if that makes sense at all, or if that sparks any thoughts for you.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I just know that it's healing. It's healing to choose my spirituality and not have somebody else tell me what it should be. And it's healing to honor my truth. I feel like I'm not mad at the Holdemans. I know that I'll be healed when any way that the things that I learned from them inhibited my life, when I will have healed, when I clear those, then that's the healing. When I no longer am held back by whatever I learned, that's the healing.
Mhm. What are some of the things you you feel like still hold you back, whether it's, yeah, I'll just leave it as open-ended. I mean, what are some things that I don't know if haunt you is the right term, but things from life as a Holdeman that cause you restriction or even distress you now?
I'd say, like, still having self-doubt or feeling like I should be small. Still, like, I'm working through the self-judgment, like really, really loving myself.
You've talked about the anger.
Mhm.
Did you go through any time of grieving?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I did. I did, like, on and off sometimes, but yeah, I have had that. Yeah. I don't really know what else to say about that. I just feel like it's I feel a bit like it's been hard for me to really I don't always resonate with the Western culture because they don't know what it's like to be so connected to community. Like one of my siblings said, like she watches her friends and thinks that it seems they're almost what they're doing is selfish, but it's actually regular self-care. Like the Western culture seems more individuated, like about individualism. And I appreciate it. I really appreciate it because it gives me so much permission to explore what I need to explore after leaving the Mennonites. But I also have not always resonated with it. Sometimes I've been very much like I need to find community. But I feel like many times whatever I look for outside of myself is something I need to find within myself first, and then those things start to like show up around me. That's been my experience in many different things. It's just been, it's like, yeah, just a path of self growth and self development. Um, ever since leaving, and maybe it was partly in while I was in there too. Something that I think that I've kind of struggled with is trying to find belonging. And I looked for it in many different ways, like belonging to community, belonging to the land, even like to the ancestors.
Are you religious at all, or so? You answered the
No.
spirituality. Do you believe? I mean, have you had any? This is getting pretty direct, and you definitely don't have to answer questions. But do you feel like you've ever had an experience that they would call conversion?
I believed that Jesus had saved me, and I believed I was a Christian for as long as I was in religion.
Have you had something you would call an experience with God?
I
Or is that something that you're not? Your
I
answers
have been
are
ever since
completely fine.
I have been ever since I was born. I don't know how to explain it, but to me, God is in everything now.
Okay.
Like everything is like, but I don't really use the word God anymore because it feels like it's too small. I need a bigger word like source or
If
divine
Amanda,
creator
if
or
a
whatever.
yeah, if Amanda was on here, she would say source. That
Yeah,
would be
source is what I
yeah.
use.
Okay.
Yeah, more like that. But yeah, it's like everything is yeah. Well, something I've gotten a lot more sensitive. I think I was really sensitive when I was young, and then I got more analytical and logical in my teens, kind of because I had to, and then I have been slowly getting more sensitive again since I left. Like I took a course in healing touch, level 1, and I started to realize that all those things that I'm noticing are something. They're information. It's like really, really subtle information. So I've been learning to work with that, and also like energy. I'm working with energy, like sensing energy is um, like a huge experience for me, and also for me, like emotions and thoughts are like energy. Their core, their energy, so you can kind of work with the structures. I've been taking like um, psychic meditations, been doing psychic meditations where it's kind of like just a guided meditation at first, but it's like really learning to use the imagination, because the imagination is not unreal. It's a different kind of real. You just have to learn how to use it. It's like there's a lot of um, like for me, the whole world um, is like energy first. It was energy first, and the energy started to vibrate slower and slower and slower until it became physical reality. And if you figure out how to work with the energy that made the physical reality, you don't change physical reality immediately because you have to be either really powerful for that or take a really long time, like creator level powerful. But you change the emotions and thoughts. You change like I've been trying to clear out the energetic structures of being a Holdeman from my space. The energy, like I can feel it as like sometimes it feels like a wetsuit of energy on the outside of me. Sometimes it feels like strict, like stiffness. I can feel it in different ways. It's like the actual energy structures of being a Holdeman are fascinating, and also their group consciousness. That I find really fascinating too, because as I'm trying to leave these energy structures, they're like, no, wait, come back. They're kind of like pull me back, like sticky, like it's spiderweb sticky, or like a cord almost, like some of the terms that we use. Like, no, you should come back. You can't leave and be different. But working with that, and also like, yeah, working with that, and then I've been working with some of their, like, I was feeling like some of the patriarchal energies that I learned, like just woven all through in my space. And I was like, wow, I didn't know this is so strong. Like, it hasn't bothered me too much. I always felt like the Western world is way less patriarchal than what I came from. So I'm like, this is like, there's a lot to work with here. I can like go pretty far with this, but this is, I was like realizing it's still in my space, and like realizing that my voice is just as valuable as a man's voice. It's just, it could be different, but it's like, it's just as valuable learning. It has to do with emotions and thoughts and the energy structure at the same time. Like when I'm clearing an energy structure, it will bring up emotions and thoughts for me. But it also has helped me to dig deeper. Like I've been healing and clearing for like 13 years or 14 years or whatever. And this is helping to bring up even deeper things that I forgot that I believed. You know, it feels like a past life. It's so different for me.
Yeah, I understand a lot of that, and but I've never had those words before. I don't know if that makes sense, but um moments, and some of this is too has been with people in my life who they point something out to me and they're like, and they, like, some of them, they've never met a Holdeman person ever. They've seen them walk by maybe, but they've never ever interacted with one or known anything about the culture. And there are times where they'll point something out to me and they're like, but Billy, that doesn't make sense. Or they'll say, you know, I don't know why you would think that, or why you'd react that way. Or sometimes it's just a matter of I'm behaving in a strange way and I realize, oh, something I encountered kind of tripped something in me that kind of sent me into a different realm in my mind for a while. And then I have realized sometimes it's like, oh, this is something that has happened before related to the church. Or sometimes I make an assumption and I realize I never would have thought of that if I didn't have this. But I've also have to remember the benefits I do have, the perspective I bring, even with my work, um, is so different. Or there's a lot of cultural associations that, like within the Holdemans, there's kind of the pecking order and things. Well, there's that in the world too, but I don't know what it is. And so I treat people the same regardless of what kind of clothes they wear or whatever, because I don't know what the valuable things are to the world. Um,
Yeah.
and like the energy piece you talked about, I never would have been able to verbalize that in that way, but it makes sense. It adds context for me. Because yeah, people have a vibe about them, and and you can sense a lot about, and sometimes I have to realize I may not be judging them because of what they chose to wear, but why they wore it. For example, like sometimes different people, um, it's not so much judging them as a person for that, but making a judgment or recognizing um, recognizing a system that connects to that, if that makes it, like the symbolism of things they choose to wear or bring or place near them. There's things like that. It's like it's just like a new concept. But it was something where, we were always taught, symbols are bad. You know, we don't have crosses, we don't have this Jesus fish, we don't have XYZ. The
Mm-hmm.
Holdemans are all about symbolism when it comes down to it. They
Yeah.
are. They just have turned this around in a different way. Um, and it all goes back full circle to controlling people, really.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you just have to have, because and there's a ethnocentrism would be kind of like we all look at things as like, you know, our lens is superior and our
Mm-hmm.
practices are the way they are because of that. And
Like,
um, those symbols to other groups are just as important to them.
yeah, yeah. I feel like I was thinking about that being the one true church thing, and I sort of laughed to myself because I'm like, oh, this church has a huge ego. It's like so funny to think of it that way for me. Like, just to think of it, it's like it sounds like a big ego. But I also I love to try to zoom out and see the big picture. Like it it's kind of a good feeling because now it feels like world history is my history because I'm a human. I'm a human and the history belongs to me too. And so I love to kind of like figure out how did we get here? Why are we like this? And also like what did the Holdeman part of the Holdemans play? And for me, it's like I was thinking to
Mhm.
myself, they're kind of like the Holdemans are a trauma response. I was like the Dark Ages, as in like the last few thousand years, not a specific time period. I like to just refer to the last few thousand years have been hard for all of us, all of humanity. And the Holdemans, I feel like maybe they like it's kind of my theory that they kind of seem to have built trauma responses into their culture that rotate and they keep the trauma going. So they can't they have a hard time getting out of it.
Mm.
Um, like, and that's part of this thing about we're the one true church. It's like part of the trauma response is to be separate from the world. And like, I don't know if you've watched Lance Dirks's video on the like kind of the minister's perspective of being in the Holdemans. And he talks about how they knew that the doctrine of the one true church didn't make sense, but they couldn't admit it to themselves or they just kept on with it anyway. And it's like, that's why they kept on with it anyway, even if it didn't make sense. It's because it's a trauma response. Like, and everything would fall apart if they kind of let go of that part. Um,
Mhm.
but like, just like, I feel like the antidote is kind of like let go of that control. Like, what if you let your people follow their own healing path and let them listen to themselves, let them have those independent spirits, and see what would happen. Like you might lose your whole culture, and that is the fear. Like, what if you lose your whole culture? What if you lose the whole everything that they hold precious? But and of course, like you don't want to lose that. Um, but the thing is that maybe you could trust that the if there's anything beautiful in the culture, it will hold up. And if
Mm.
it's not, it needs to die. And you need to create something better. And the thing is that that is going to happen, whether they want it to or not. And are they going to go with it or go against it?
Mm.
And like you're not going to have it exactly the same once you're done changing. Like that's kind of what I feel like the whole world is working with is how do we learn to honor the individual and their path, um, and still preserve the beauty of our culture, all of the world's cultures. You know, like the
Mm.
Holdemans are not really that different from the rest of the world. They just think that they are, and they are. Of course, they're unique. Everybody's unique, you know, but like
Mm.
they're kind of going on the same path as everybody else. Everybody else
Mm.
is like having kind of a similar experience to them. They're not like I always felt when I was young, like I was an alien. Like, well, maybe not I was an alien. Everybody else were the aliens. Like I go to the grocery store, and I remember when I thought to myself, "Oh my goodness, worldly people have emotions." It's like I didn't realize that. It's like I felt so different than them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The they are like we hear about them as if they are alien, they are strange.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, we're like, well, we're the strangers, we're the pilgrims traveling, and we're just kind of camping out for a while. but I I didn't realize how everyday people out in the world are just the same, just not participating in the same schedule of activities that we did.
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe it another way, but this whole things people do, other people, they have rhythms to their lives and patterns, um, but the way they go about it is so different, and the drive behind why they do what they do is different. Whether I didn't like to admit it, but so much of what I did really because of fear. I was very willing, but
Hmm.
when it deep down it was because, well, if I don't, it means hell, and I'm going to take the safe route
Yeah.
because I don't want to disappoint the creator who has promised that they will, venge themselves if I disobey. Um, I don't know how to describe that another way,
Yeah.
but to find that there are people who are involved in faith communities, even within Christianity, who their theology isn't that way. Um, like even now, where I've been going to church, um, what I really appreciate is the minister names those things which the church has used even outside of the Holdemans. But for example, this idea of Jesus being this figure of sacrifice on behalf of us who are so horrible, um, and how that's something that's not even in the scriptures in an academic lens. The context we have, plus what we've learned since then, and other information shows otherwise. And it's been healing to hear them in that context from the
Hmm.
pulpit say
Yeah.
that's harmful, and it's been used to manipulate people. And it's just like, oh, and it was so interesting because we had all kinds of guests that normally aren't there on a Sunday on Easter. And I so bad wanted to just like go around asking these people, what did you think of that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I was just like, this is new. This is new. This is not what I
Yeah.
expected to hear today. Um,
That's so great though.
yeah.
It's
And
like,
and that yeah, it's strange going to church and leaving feeling like, oh, I am okay, I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah. That's like during the beginning of like during 2020, the lockdowns, I started studying Googling religious trauma. And I went to a support group for a bit and a book club. And that was very insightful. I learned a lot, and it was healing to be around other people who had similar experiences. But the thing that kind of stuck out to me is that they said two of the most harmful things about religion are the idea of original sin and a literal hell. Um, for me, it's mostly the original sin. Yeah, that literal hell was definitely used to manipulate. But the idea of original sin, like just thinking like, yeah, oh, I lose my train of thought sometimes. But um, feeling like your um, original sin is like, it's kind of like saying like it's horrible to make mistakes. You should never make mistakes. Like the idea that you need that your mistakes are so bad that you need somebody to die for them, like a divine somebody.
Mm,
It kind of just like teaches that it's kind of bad to be human. Like you shouldn't really exist. Like it's better if you just don't exist. Like I feel like I was never told
mm,
that, but I kind of feel like I got the vibe that you shouldn't really exist. Like you shouldn't really be human. Like it's not really okay. Like you shouldn't really be in your
yeah.
body. Like you should like hurt your body. You should like not love it. Like
Mm,
almost like it's a bit masochistic or whatever that word is. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but
Yeah.
a little bit like they just don't want to be here. Like, let's get to heaven as soon as we can. So we don't like it here. We don't belong here, and we shouldn't have a self. Like I really shouldn't have a self. Like I should be, go back to God. I shouldn't have this self. And you're like, you're actually supposed to have a self so you can like explore things and bring those experiences. Like the universe needs everybody's experiences. They're so valuable. And it's almost like the Holdemans really like trying to put a stop to that. Like, don't have your own personal experiences. But to me, that is part of the trauma response, because it is like it's painful to go out and be a self. That's kind of painful. Like, and you have to like explore and like growing pains, and you have to try new things, and it's just like they didn't want to. I've thought sometimes that the Holdemans seem kind of tribal, like you don't want to like it's dangerous. It's dangerous to go outside of the tribe, you know. So and trying to stay safe, trying to they have like those control things, all those mechanisms or whatever to try and keep the group safe. Like the group consciousness the group is more important than individual. And I've been learning more that the health of the individual kind of determines the health of the group, you know. But it can be it's really both. But yeah. Sorry, what?
Have you ever heard of spiral dynamics?
No, I haven't.
With some of the things you've been talking about, I think it may interest you. It's a model of development, psychological development. You saying it just reminded me when you said tribal. So what they have is they have colors. The spiral is colors. You start with beige. That's like an infant. They have automatic reflexes. They cry when they're hungry. They cry when they're dirty. They're not thinking, oh man, I'm hungry, I better start crying. It's just a reflex. Then you move into purple. That's kind of like about your 2 to 3 year olds. But what's interesting is up till about 10,000 years ago, they believed people were purple. At that point, humanity as a whole started to move into red, which red is then more of like a warrior. It would be up to probably about your young teens, kind of that mentality. Anyway, it's there's a guy named Phil Drysdale who has a bunch of YouTube videos on spiral dynamics, and I think it's fascinating to listen to him talk about it. He used to be a pastor, and he talks about it in relation to religion. And he says, okay, so the red in the spiral looks like this, and this, and this when you're talking about a religious person. And it's amazing. Like you listen to that and you're like, whoa, like you're still in red, you're still way down the spiral, and you're starting to pick up pieces of the church. Oh yeah, that makes sense. And then you move into blue, which I would say a lot of us are probably in orange working towards green after blue. So red, blue, orange, and green. But then you get into blue and you're like, whoa, there's a bunch of the church in there. And it's fascinating to me to see how actually the church is hanging way back down that spiral. They have not allowed development, psychological development to continue to move on up. Yeah, it's just something that's interesting if you'd ever want to look at that.
Yeah, maybe like send it to me later.
Okay. You were talking about energy healing. Is that like Reiki? Or is it something different?
This was healing touch, which is kind of similar down that line.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, both of the other people we've talked to have both been. In fact, the first guy we talked to was, I believe, a Reiki instructor.
Oh, interesting.
So,
interesting.
Yeah.
That's nice to know, because I have felt a bit like maybe alone in a way that I haven't often met ex-Holdemans who get into spirituality the way I have, but I need to expand my horizons.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's something we've actually been discussing, is how the interesting, I don't want to say bins, but I'm going to say bins that people end up in after leaving or being put out. Some people get involved with another high control group of some kind, or they get involved with an extremist group of some kind, like we used to say civil religion people, but now like Christian nationalism within the United States, and there are a lot of former Holdemans who have gotten involved with things like that, or some people go the other end of the political spectrum and they get involved in that way, or sometimes they throw off spirituality altogether. I mean, it's just interesting that there are different pockets where people go in, but it's interesting how people who, it seems, we're talking like the other guests we're already having with this podcast have somehow found a different path than that, and they've really explored things that are internal and how that relates, rather than just trying to seek more outward connection. And I think too, society at large, there's a lot of people who, for one reason or the other, they're seeking external ways to validate and connect themselves and occupy their time and efforts and energies, that aren't advancing themselves. They're working towards a cause. Within the church, the cause is, eternity, and getting in as many people on the bus to go with us as we can, while also making sure that they've passed the bar to be on the bus. It's not a very nice metaphor, but it kind of explains, where the train is going. I mean, we used to sing about it, it's sing about the railway to heaven. So yeah, it's just yeah, it's interesting to see those different paths, and perhaps in time we can find more people willing to come and share their paths if they are different. But it is interesting that so many who are finding themselves there are ready to talk on the podcast and discuss those things and how they have been healing. I haven't really been involved in that, although I've been curious, but still frightened enough not to go, to get in too deep, because I think I don't have enough context yet. But
like
yeah.
some of the stuff I study, I would have been afraid of at first. I was realizing like I'm getting into stuff that used to scare me, and I don't go into it if it scares me. I go into it one step at a time, and then it's like, oh, this makes sense. Oh, this makes sense. I wouldn't have studied psychic stuff for years. I didn't want to study psychic stuff. But when I found this is just like made sense. It was like simple meditations, and it helped me feel better because it cleared the energy structures underneath my emotions and thoughts, and it helped the emotions and thoughts like clear better. Like I didn't have to work endlessly at changing my beliefs. I could actually let those beliefs go like down the grounding cord, and it doesn't change it immediately. It's not immediate, but it is faster change. So it's almost like I'm using psychic tools to help my self-development, and it's not like so scary anymore. And also dealing with mental health issues and different things that I've dealt with, this actually makes me less scared, because I'm like, I know how to deal with these weird mental things that can come up that you don't really understand. Like there's a lot of stuff about the brain that science doesn't understand yet, or things that the brain can do, whatever. But like experiences that you have, I know how to deal with the psychic part of that, or the psychological part of that too, a bit better. Like it's sort of like a tool that has helped me feel more confident. But yeah, I feel too like I haven't built this huge, big, successful life after I left the Mennonites physically, like on the outside. but I have explored and tried so many different things and learned about all these different, like learned about worldly families and through being a nanny, and learned about dating, and learned about communities, and learned about like authentic relating. That was a really good one for helping me heal my experience with groups and different things. And I feel like I'm laying a foundation, and who knows what will come out of it. But that's like the fun part. Now it's like doesn't really frighten me. It's like this is an exploration. It's so much fun.
Yeah. Relating to people as a human to a human is so healing. Yeah, I don't know how to describe that another way, but it's been so good to just go up and just be like, hello, how are you? And start with just how do you find yourself today? You know, how are you? And some people they have an answer. Some people they pause for a minute. Some people go, why would you ask? And it just, yeah, it's a new way of relating to people rather than I never realized just how finite our social experience was and how surface level. Like nobody has an
Mm-hmm.
inside because there's no individual. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just like, hey, what did what did you think of the weather today? Do you like volleyball? How do you feel, what songbooks do you have with you? I mean, just like the it's just so basic and it's not deep, and the depth of conversation is exploring the right answers to the theological structures and giving
Yeah.
the right answer as understanding the doctrines and how to follow and asking questions as a way of avoiding confrontation because you don't want to
Mm-hmm.
step on the group think, that just, yeah, being able to ask genuine questions without getting har being harmed because of your curiosity. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I feel like um the judgment has been difficult, and that's it's so feels like it's been so hard to let go of that. I didn't even realize I had it. Often I didn't realize. It's like, wow, I just judged myself like 10 times there for different things, and I didn't even realize that I was doing that, or other people judge other people. But like think about, I mean, like there was rules, judgments about the length of your sleeves and what kind of sleeves, like for women, what kind of pattern you had, and if you had big flowers or little flowers, and if it was shiny, and if it had holes, and how long was your skirt, and did you have elastic, and did you have a belt, and how big was the neck hole, and did you have a collar, did you have zippers or buttons, and on and on and on. It was like so many rules, so many, not really rules, but like people noticed everything about that, everything
Mm.
about those little
But
those
but
little
we don't have
details.
rules because they're not written down, so they're not
Yeah,
rules. You're just supposed to know better. You're
yeah.
spiritually supposed to know what the rules are,
And even
which
from, yeah,
oh
even from congregation to congregation, those little things can be different too. Like, yeah. But just like even the difficulty sometimes I've had with trying to verbalize myself now during the podcast is still feeling like I'll be judged for the things I'm going to talk about. Like it doesn't flow because there's still like almost like blocks that I've almost whited out that I'm almost not even aware of, that um still make it a little bit hard
Yeah.
for it to flow. But I'm getting better at it, and I just keep working at it. I am where I am, and I keep on growing. That's all that I can do.
yeah.
Earlier, you said something about, I think, you have had to work at realizing that you are as much as anyone else. And I think you're referring to being a woman. And that's something that frustrated me immensely about, well, you were just laying out all the rules. It amazes me how many rules the women have.
Yeah.
And men, men were far more free to do what they wanted. But what frustrates me is that it took me a long time to lay down some of that stuff and see, I don't know how to explain this, no longer see a woman as any different than a man. I mean, the only difference are some physical differences, and I have blonde hair and someone else is just brown, and that doesn't mean I'm better than them because I'm blonde. So why in the world would we think that one person who has this body part is better than this person who has that body part? And it's been really frustrating to me to just watch that completely baked in, how a woman is inferior, is weaker, is I just, it makes me, the more I look at it, the angrier I get about it. It's it's so it's so made up and unnecessary.
Thank you for getting angry about that. It's healing to hear it. You don't have to be angry, but yeah.
Well, the objectification
Yeah.
of women and the obligation that they are there to just be a supplement to men. Like I remember when that first hit me, I was at Lone Tree listening to a wedding sermon. And most of the sermon, and a lot of times wedding sermons would be this way, but this one was all the more worse because he went so far, and Lone Tree is this huge place and packed full for a wedding. And I can't, and I remember thinking, and it's, and especially the circumstances of this particular woman, thinking, imagine being in this room with about 1,000 people, and there's a person telling you you need to make yourself sexually available to your husband so he doesn't look elsewhere in a wedding sermon. And I remember how hard that hit me, realizing just how sick that is. And as a thought, and then to say it in that venue, and the fact that everyone is just, I mean, people don't sit there and nod and say amen, but they're all sitting there silently agreeing to this. And I never have been bold enough to ask her how she felt about it, letting go of her career and everything she had worked for this, because she had been a career person and wasn't a 20-year-old. And to hear all of this stuff and to be there, maybe she never had a problem with it. I don't know. But like in my head, I was sat there and I put that together, and that's when my whole attitude towards women changed. And I was never very much I had the benefit of, I had very strong women figures in my life, as strong as they can be within that world. But I don't think that I had such a strong view of that difference in their role. But it really solidified for me right there how I believed. And I think that was one of several things that eventually added up for me that said, okay, I can't comply anymore. I can't be quiet because I can't live with myself. I'm not willing to go to heaven on these terms, if that makes sense. So that, I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, it ignited some anger for me that I didn't, not a rage, but it just a desire for justice and equity, that we've been told justice is wrong. If we had gotten justice, we would have been sent to hell already, and having to reverse that. I do have to be careful about time because I'm still at work and I have to go fix supper.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's worth it.
I dreamt the other night, I had a dream that I was in the old church that I grew up in, and the men and women were sitting on whichever side they wanted, and the girls went up and led the songs. I was like, "Ooh, you're getting somewhere."
I love that idea.
Yeah, I definitely like I left at like age 19, 20, and I didn't want to go to college, and I was too much anxiety to, and also I couldn't listen to somebody else, like listen to teachers. I needed to follow my own path. Um, and taken me a while. I just never thought of a career when I was growing up. You know, you would just get married and have kids. Maybe I'd be a teacher, but just get married and have kids, and then I have finally figured out, I think, what I want to, like, what I do want to have, um, what I want to do, like something that I would enjoy doing for the rest of my life, I think. Um, but I need to have I'm just working on the courage and the, like, being as big as I need to be, taking up space.
You don't have to elaborate any on that, but is it in the mental health field?
No, I'd
It's
like
not.
to work in my body work, like somatic body work.
So okay. So not exactly mental health, but close.
No.
Helping seek the healing for others too.
Yeah, or just helping people realize that they are good the way they are. They're whole the way they are. You know, just what I love about the body work is that I've been learning. My dance teacher taught, like, also was trained in body work and has been teaching me. And what I love about it is that it is so loving to the body. I have never, like, felt like my human body was accepted for what it is. Like, it is okay to be this way. It's just a beautiful little innocent body, and it's trying to help me as well as I can. And it's just, it has its own wisdom, and you can listen to it. And I've been learning um like human touch, how touch is so healing, and how you can touch, like, in a beneficial way that helps, like, both people. You know, it's just so beautiful what I have learned with this body work, and definitely part of a huge part of my healing journey.
Any advice for someone who's asking questions? Um, Anything?
Just listen to yourself. And you probably have the answer inside of you, and you don't need to ask anybody else for it.
Okay. Well, I have enjoyed this immensely. I I was really inspired with your story,
Thank you.
your path. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Thanks for listening, and I appreciated the conversation.
Yeah, I I I think we're kind of spoiled as the podcast host people because we get to hear these stories and interact with them. And it's very healing to tell your story, but also to hear other people's
Mm-hmm.
stories who have walked the same road you did for a time, and how their road and their own path that they took can add meaning as you walk yours too. And
Mm-hmm.
that in that way, we're always told we're just walking each other home to eternity. But perhaps the destination isn't so much as that journey, and we really are all walking together still in a different way. And
Mm-hmm.
and we are learning so much more than we ever thought. And so I feel yeah, it's a privilege to have that because yeah, and I think even, COVID time gave people a lot of opportunity, and I think that the floodgates have been opened. There's a lot of things that have changed that will allow people. I mean, I even remember working at the manor, and all of a sudden video calls were okay. And of course,
Yeah.
some of them questioned us showing up with that iPad to their room. But ever since then, it's just Yeah, and it's been a very good thing. And if it weren't for COVID time, I probably never would have seen the things that I saw out there and heard from people. And it was really people from different playing groups telling their stories that helped me connect and leave. And um, yeah, that was a big part of it. So that's what, when I heard about us having our own podcast, I thought, oh, that's even cooler.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I've been in personal therapy basically since I've left, a few months after I left, and I felt like I'd kind of topped out. And I didn't think of this podcast as a way to continue my journey, but I have found it very interesting, the things that it's brought up inside me, and it's definitely challenging me to continue moving. I
Mm-hmm.
think each person that I've talked to has taken my mind into some area that I needed to go, that I didn't know I needed to go. I'd forgotten all about that. And so, yeah, for me, I love doing it, but it's almost just continuing my therapy.
Yeah.
So,
That's a beautiful thing about connecting with other people is like I love the places that I go in my mind and I have a beautiful inside world. And then sometimes people bring in like this new flavor and this new spice that I didn't think about, and it's just expands. It's like an expansion
Mhm.
just at the right time. And I love it.
you know,
Yeah, I haven't had the benefit of being able to go see a therapist or go into counseling or anything. Um, but I do have the benefit of having some very therapeutic people in my life and thinking of my whole journey and how I explore and the questions I ask as a living therapy and creating an environment around myself that is therapeutic and really is growth centered. Um, and and that has allowed me to change not only things internally, but also how I work, my relationship with my work. Where I come and I do my work and then I'm done. At the very minute of 5 o'clock, I can switch gears and do something like this and not still be going. All of those things. It just a change. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it, but just the it's not easy, but yet you feel that growth that's coming. I don't know. And because you talked a little bit about that before, it's like, it feels so good, but it's still hard. It is hard,
Yeah.
but it's
It's
okay.
rewarding good. It's rewarding good.
Yeah.
What you're saying sounds to me like self-care, like taking care of yourself and loving yourself
Yeah.
and permission to do so.
Yeah. I never would have given myself permission or to even think about getting up in the morning, taking a shower and doing these different things as taking care of my later self or, things like that, rather than I need to have my house spotless so that way, some stranger shows up that I'm a good witness because cleanliness is godliness and whatever else. And it's very toxic. And I still struggle with that in some ways, but changing the narrative in my mind that, well, I keep this environment clean because I enjoy the way that looks. And it allows me not to be cluttered in my mind also.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a way to care for myself later because that item will be ready for use when I come back. And that reframing. And that has really helped a lot. I don't know.
all right. Well, thank you. And I am keeping everybody's name in just a mental list. And I think at some point I'd like to put together, I would personally, it's kind of a hope of mine that we put together some groups,
Mm-hmm.
maybe everyone who's interested in energy healing and we have a
Yeah.
discussion. So,
Yeah, I would definitely love to connect with other ex Holdemans who
yeah,
are like exploring some of those things, because there's like so much. I find I meet many worldly people who understand parts of me, but not all of me. And maybe I find ex-Mennonites who understand parts of me, but not all of me. And it's always nice when many points are understood, not just a few. But every relationship is useful too. Every connection is useful.
Yep.
That, I think where the value comes for me with this is being able to connect with people who understand the before time, before I left and changed my entire life in just almost an instant, it felt like. Because that is the hardest part, is nobody around me where I live, nobody has any idea what life was like. People like in my house, they know, they've heard church services and they've gone, oh my word, what are they saying? But like there's some, like I try to keep some things that, some people, they're like, I am triggered, I don't want to listen to Holdeman Church or whatever. But for me, it's been healing to, Sunday evening, if I'm not engaged in something, I'll tune in to listen to church, and I'll listen. And then we'll have a deconstructing conversation about what we heard. Or those, even not even just the sermon, but some of the songs, they are cult favorites. They bring a new term to that. Songs of control. I mean, they're songs, and they're meant to control you. They are. And deconstructing that and recognizing it, or even sometimes rewriting the lyrics to some songs. Because for me, singing has been one of the hardest things to leave, and I still am very involved in singing. In fact, I get paid to sing now, but nobody will sing the same way because they haven't been put in that box. And so, yeah, it's just different. Singing was the only thing I had. If it weren't for the singing, I probably would have died of depression or something. It's the one thing I had, I think. It was that, and taking care of elders, that was a big part of my life too. But yeah, singing was everything,
I miss
because it
the
was the only
singing too.
thing. Yeah.
I miss the singing too. I like to try and figure out some way of doing it outside, but I don't know if it'll ever be the same.
Yeah.
I miss things like that. Today I was telling my sister, is like, yeah, the private schools weren't perfect, but it was more like a home than an institution. And like I got to play hockey, and I got to play a whole bunch of different sports that I loved. And when you're young age, you could play co-ed and don't have to be scared of getting hurt. But I loved playing sports, and the volleyball and the hockey and baseball.
Volleyball. We didn't really get hockey in Canada,
Yeah.
but volleyball, yeah. Volleyball has always been great, and yeah, volleyball, but especially singing. And yeah, even now I I I'm involved with a community group where we actually sing on a platform of social justice, which is very interesting and new to me. I've never sang in a non-Christian context ever. So the songs have been interesting, but really when it comes down to it, they do have a very Christ-like message, of, one of the songs we're even singing is called Boxes, and it talks about why are there boxes for pink and boxes for blue, and why are we so concerned with putting each other into boxes, and that. And it's just like the fact that there's a song about that and we're singing about it, and that message is going, and it's not a message of condemnation or warning people about the wrath to come, that has been healing too.
Another thing that I did right at the beginning is I got a piano keyboard. So I was looking in my journals, and right near the end I was like, I wrote in my journal, like, would I be willing to get a piano even if I thought I might get expelled for it? I wrote to myself in my journal. But that was the first thing I did when I left, is got a keyboard and like just been teaching myself piano. I know a little guitar, but not much. But that was kind of sad to me. I wish I could have learned when I was younger even, and then I would be even better now. But oh well, I'm just happy. I love doing it.
I studied it in college, and I felt so guilty, but I was so excited about it. And I actually got photographed by the college playing a piece on the organ, and they saw it. And I remember the questions that came in.
Wow.
I was surprised that one, it ended up not being that big of a deal, but it was still, I remember just the absolute dread when I saw that got published. And of course, where they are in the Mennonite college in town is publishing this stuff. They all see it.
Yeah.
Whew. But
I know Ontario's kind of, there's a lot of Mennonites, not as, but like to live like with 13 congregations around you, oh my goodness, you just be like, feel claustrophobic. I would feel
yeah,
claustrophobic.
there's almost more Holdemans than other people, and most of the other people around are
Wow.
Mennonites of different kinds. So it is extremely, like, even businesses, like all of the businesses that aren't some like chain are run by Mennonite people, whether they're Holdeman or not. The schools are run by Mennonite people. The college is a private Mennonite college. So like it's just, yeah, I never realized how homogenous everything was until later. Like, this is kind of weird that there's this whole county. Well, it's really two counties just covered with Mennonite people, and most of them are Holdemans, and the fact that the police recognize them as a population that they're watching for different crime, and I mean just different things that I learned later. I'm just like, whew,
Like the
it is
crime is
really,
different there among the Holdemans, or like on
yes,
those counties, the crime is different.
yeah, and they
Holdemans have
and
crime?
they I'll never forget. So for a while, I worked for the hospital in Hutchinson and would go there, and the security of the security of the hospital was the police chief for a small town. Um, and it wasn't a small town that has a lot of Holdemans. It was a small town in between two towns where there's a lot of Holdemans. And he talked about how Holdeman people are some of the worst speeders on the
Oh,
road.
that doesn't
Um,
surprise me.
yeah, so there was that. But I also know the Holdemans recognize the privilege that they get within within the government and law enforcement because of different things they would talk about. And one of them being, I remember one time we were at a youth deal and they were talking about how, if one of these sisters is along in the car with her head covering, I tend not to get a ticket, but if it's just me, I'll get a ticket. And I just
Interesting.
thought, and there was one time I even joked about that with something else, and people kind of like, they look down on me for saying that. I'm like, well, let's just look at the reality. That's the way the law is behaved, because in our society, Mennonite people and plain people, within Anabaptist realm have been put on a pedestal as though they are innocent and above the law, and they don't commit crimes the same way. And if they do commit crimes, the church will handle it. And that's something that outside of this, I've been doing a lot of advocacy work because
Hmm.
it is a big problem in our area of Kansas where I am from, but in other areas where there's large Anabaptist populations and pockets where it's just not just Holdemans, but other plain groups. It's interesting to see how the law deals with things and how the church has found ways to control the government's response to crime within their circles.
Wow. Hmm.
Um, yeah, you see a lot of that in the church too, that they do what they can to manipulate the law. Lately they've been lobbying, like in the state of Kansas, for the private schools and not having to participate in state assessments that the state has imposed, things of
Hmm.
that nature.
Yeah. I was looking through some of my old school books the other day and I was like, wow, that's what I learned. Like India's economy doesn't work because they have a false religion. That's what I learned at school. And
The
stuff
stuff from
about like
Christian Light Publishers.
and why evolution doesn't work because they haven't found the missing link. And like it'd be interesting to it's just like also just that the teachers have about 3 days of learning and then that's all the preparation they have for being a teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of them don't even have that. We had for a while, I don't know why, but our congregation at Heston felt like all the teachers needed to be Canadians. And we'd have all this trouble trying to get them across the border, and they'd miss teacher prep. So they'd just be showing up and winging it, basically. And I just think,
Yeah.
like, these young people are already getting limited enough. Don't they deserve somebody who's prepared to handle this? Um,
Hmm.
I just,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think it's crazy. There was a while where I don't know how I got clear to do it, but I mean, I was teaching ninth graders and I had an eighth grade education at the time. Just dumb.
Yeah.
I
Like
mean, yeah.
I was teacher's aide for a bit too, and trying to teach very difficult stuff. I like had to take it home and study it and learn it and then try and teach it. That was just grade 7 stuff, not even the grade 9 was difficult. But I don't know. I do like the small little schools. Like I wouldn't want to go to a public school and I don't really like them, but in my time during doing nanny work, I really loved the Montessori, um, especially because they one of the core facets is kind of like that the teachers teach the children to not need them. The job of the teachers is to teach the children not to need them. And that's opposite, totally opposite of what the Mennonites taught. They taught the children to be dependent so that they would continue to need them as adults and like feel like they couldn't be strong enough to be on their own. And Montessori felt like it was the opposite. And I really loved that.
Mhm. Teach them, guide them to all learning and exploration. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I better get back. I'm getting text messages asking me if I'm coming. Do I need to put the meat away?
Yeah. So it's so
Okay.
nice talking. Thanks for asking me
Yeah.
Yeah.
to be on the podcast.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if you know of anybody who you think has good things to share, or well, not even good, I shouldn't classify it, but just has a feels a desire or maybe wonders about sharing, send them our way because we want to find more people who can have these discussions. And really the platform is very open to whatever they want to discuss, for the
Hmm.
most part.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's your story.
Yeah. I'll think about it and see um, if somebody like comes to mind or seems like they would be a good fit or whatever. Like, not everybody wants to even talk about it very publicly and stuff, but
Yeah.
some people are open to that.
It takes bravery. I mean, we had a talk at the beginning. We kind of prepared an introduction, and one of the things we decided to talk about, like, what are we scared about? And it's like, this is open a can of worms. It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, the benefits are worth more than our fear that people will judge us, and they very well may will. But it's those people who are quietly on the sidelines of the church, suffering under the regime, basically, that might have an opportunity to hear this and have a
Hmm.
connection. I mean, that for me,
Hmm.
it was hearing a couple of different podcasts, and hearing and understanding and accepting and then being willing to to just believe in myself. And that,
Hmm.
even now, I still don't entirely do that, um but if I can encourage other people, I hope they surpass me in their love of self.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Thank you for listening. It is an honor to connect with our guests, and we wish the best for them as well as our listeners. Remember to like and subscribe for more episodes. Our People can be found on all major podcast platforms as well as YouTube. If you are interested in sharing your story, please contact us at ourpeoplepodcastteam@gmail.com. Thank you.